Hi there, guys. Okay, so this video might run a little bit long because I'm going to code it as we go. I think it'll be quite useful for you to kind of follow my thought processes when I'm building these sorts of programs up. Okay, so I've written the first part here. Okay, obviously the question said they wanted to have a program called chemical test. Okay, so mine is called chemical test. And they wanted us to code a method called test1. So for the guys that weren't in the lesson in class on methods, the whole idea behind methods is you want as little coding in your main as possible. Okay, so the idea is you take out the different functions that you want the main to do, and you take those pieces of code out and you put them into their own methods. That's kind of how Java works. So you're going to end up with tons of little methods that do jobs for you, and then you are just going to call those methods when you need them. So you can see here, remember you can pause the video at any stage if you want to copy some of my code or something. Obviously you can't copy the code, but if you want to type it out, you can just pause the video when whatever you want is on the screen. Okay, so you can see here, public class chemical test, the name of the program. Okay, here is my main method. We have to have that because remember that is the entry point. The virtual machine, the Java virtual machine is going to look for the method called main. And because it knows that that is the method that has to run to start your program going. So you have to have public static void main. Okay, and then a string array of arguments. So there is our main method. Now in the question, they said they want us to code a method called test1. So the name is kind of giving it away already. So obviously what this method is going to do, okay, and you can see I've got the whole method on the screen for you. There it is there. Okay, there's the starting squiggly and there's the ending squiggly. So this method is going to do one complete test for one chemical. Okay, so if you read through the question, this method, you should be able to feed in the name of the chemical, and then you've got to take in 5 different tests for the starting germs, the ending germs, and the time taken. And they want you to calculate the average efficiency for that chemical. So in the question, they said in 2.2.4, they said add code to repeat the steps 2.2.1. Okay, I would argue that you probably don't want to enter the name of the chemical 5 times. The idea is you're putting the name of the chemical in once, and then you are putting in 5 different experiments for that same chemical. Okay, so you can see here, I've declared myself 2 variables right at the top. Okay, one I've called total efficiency. Okay, that is going to keep a running total of the efficiencies as I calculate them. I need the total because I'm going to divide that by 5 to give me the average. Okay, so I need to keep a running total. So there it is, total efficiency, and I set it equal to 0. Then I need I don't have to have, but I'm declaring one here anyway, a variable or a field. They can call them either variables or fields, called average efficiency. They're both double types, and we've set it to 0. So now what I'm going to do here is we enter the name of the chemical, okay, and then we have a for loop here. Okay, so we got a for loop. You can see it there. It's going to run 5 times. Okay, it's going to run from 0 up to but not equal to 5. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, that gives us 5 loops. So it's going to loop 5 times, and each time we're going to enter in the starting germs. Okay, so I'll just call it start germs. It's an integer. I didn't declare my variables up top here. I'm declaring them in the loop here. And then the end germs, okay, there is an integer as well, and the amount of time taken, also an integer. So we feed in those 3 values. We then calculate the efficiency. Okay, so we're going to say the efficiency is equal to starting germs minus the end germs divided by the time taken. Now, the reason I'm multiplying by 1.0 here is I want to force this to be a double. Okay, otherwise I've got an integer minus an integer divided by an integer, and I'm going to get an integer answer. If one of those, okay, the dividend or the divisor, if neither of them are double, my answer will be an integer. I have to have one of them to be a double. So by multiplying the time by 1.0, I'm not changing the time, I'm just changing its type. So this is integer minus integer, which is integer on the top, but time is now a double because I multiplied it by 1.0, something with a decimal place. And as soon as I divide by a double, my answer, efficiency, is going to be a double. Right. So I've got the efficiency for these figures. And now what I must do is I must take that efficiency and add it to the running total. Okay, so obviously the first time through the loop, total efficiency is 0. So it's going to be 0 plus whatever this efficiency is. And that'll be, we're going to save it into the total efficiency. Next time we come around, we're going to get different numbers and we're going to add a different efficiency on. But total efficiency will be the sum of the 5 different efficiencies. Okay, so total efficiency is the running total. Once this loop completes, we are going to take that total efficiency and divide it by 5 because there were 5 sets of 5 experiments. And that will give us our average efficiency. So we started off with 0, but the new value for average efficiency will be whatever the total efficiency is divided by 5. And it will be a double because obviously total efficiency is a double. Okay, now that we have got that information, we've got everything we need, we can output the result. So I'm saying system out print, okay, not print line, okay, just print because I want the cursor to stay at the end of this line. So I'm saying chemical plus and then chem name. That was the name of the chemical that we fed in. Okay, so chemical plus whatever the name of the chemical is, plus, and then there's a space bar in here, has an efficiency rating of space. Okay, then I'm coming to the next line. Now I'm doing a print F, a print format, because I want this average efficiency to be to 3 decimal places. So print F or print format, that is your friend when it comes to formatting. So %3F, that's the template, meaning as many characters as you want, but I want 3 decimal places. Okay, so that will then print the number. Remember, we left the cursor at the end of this. Okay, it wasn't print line. So it's going to print that number at the end of this line. And now that we have completed, I'm just going to do a print line with nothing. Okay, just a blank string. That will then drop me to the next line. Okay, so that is test 1. Okay, so that is my method for test 1. Now, obviously, test 1 will not run unless I call it. Okay, so inside of my main, I must call test 1. Okay, so as soon as I call test 1 will run. It will ask me for 5 values, and you can actually see at the bottom here what the output is. Okay, and obviously the number's not the same because I don't know what numbers they used to get that efficiency rating of 5.234 or whatever it was. I just put my own numbers in, but you can see it is formatted to 3 decimal places. So that is the code up to the end of 2.2. Okay, so if you need to, you can just pause the video and take that down. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to write some more code now for the next section. Okay, so now we've made a few changes to the program. Okay, so now we have put in here section 2.3, which has asked us to now, instead of just doing one chemical, we need to be able to do multiple chemicals. So we need to be able to tell it how many we are going to do. And also, we need to keep track of which of those chemicals is going to have the highest efficiency and which is going to have the lowest efficiency. So obviously, we're going to have to save both the name of the chemical and its efficiency if we're going to know if it's the highest or the lowest. So the changes that I've made here is, here we are in our class. You will notice here that I've declared these variables above the main. Okay, so they are inside the class. So we are inside the class, but we are above the main. Okay, I'm not declaring these 4 variables inside of the main, and I'm not declaring them inside of test 1. I'm declaring them above the main. Okay, that means that if by declaring them there, they are now global. Okay, these variables are now global, and all methods inside of this class can see them and use them. Okay, so that is important. Now I've declared I need a string for the name of the highest efficient chemical. Okay, now I have to put the keyword static in front of it because I'm using these inside of static methods. Okay, because the methods are static, I must declare my fields, my variables must be declared as static as well. If you don't do that, you will get a compiler error. Okay, it'll tell you that you're trying to use a non-static variable in a static context. That's what it means. So I put static in front of it. So I need a string for the name of the highest efficient chemical. I need a double for its actual efficiency. So whatever its efficiency is, I need a double to keep that. Then I need a string to keep the name of the lowest efficient chemical. And I need a double to hold its efficiency. Okay, so these here are going to be my variables that are going to store the information about which is the most efficient chemical and which is the least efficient chemical. Okay, so the first thing they want us to do is they say that inside of the main method, we must get the user to tell us how many chemicals to test. Okay, so I'm inside the main method now, and you can see here in this line, I'm asking the guy to enter in how many chemicals to test. Okay, and it's an integer. Okay, so I can do numchem inside of the main because it's not a variable that I need access to from in any other method. Okay, so numchem is a local variable inside of main. Okay, so now we need to, however many chemicals they want, we now need to call the test 1, because remember, test 1 will do a full test. It'll do 5 sets of numbers for one single chemical. So if I've got 3 chemicals to test, I need to call test 1 3 times. So you can see here I'm saying for int count equals 0, count less than numchem. Okay, so numchem is the number of chemicals I've got to do. So I'm going to call test 1 that many times. If I've got 3 chemicals, test 1 will be called once, and then a second time, and then a third time. Okay, so that there we'll call it numchem times. Okay, so let's just go down to test 1, and I will show you what change I have made here. Okay, so in this, everything in here was as we had it. Okay, this here entered 5 sets of results for this one chemical, calculated the efficiency, and printed out the efficiency. Okay, but now we need to check, do we have a new high or do we have a new low? Okay, so we need to do that check here inside of the test 1. We cannot do it in main, okay, because this information here, average efficiency, is not a global variable. Okay, it's only visible inside of test 1. Okay, so this average efficiency, we need to use it here in test 1. Name highest F and name lowest F, these are globals. Okay, remember we defined them above the main. Okay, so these are globally visible, but these are not. So we need to save them here if need be. So how do I know if this is the very first chemical I am doing? Okay, so if this is the very first chemical, obviously the highest F and the lowest efficiency are both going to be 0. So that is my test to see if this is my first chemical. If highest F, okay, because remember when we declared them up top here, we set highest F to 0 and lowest F to 0. Okay, they were both set to 0. So if we get down here and they are still both 0, okay, highest f equals 0 and lowest f equals 0, we know that this is the first time we are checking a chemical. And if this is the first time, it means that at this point in time, this particular chemical is both the highest and the lowest efficiency, because it's the only one we have done. Okay, so what we do is the name highest F, we set it to chem name, and we save the average efficiency into the highest F. And we save chem name into the name lowest efficiency, and we put the average efficiency into the lowest F. So at this point in time, that particular chemical and whatever its efficiency is both the highest and the lowest. Okay, so this will terminate. We'll come back up here. This loop runs again. Test 1 gets called again. Okay, so we come back down to test 1, and a new chemical is entered with 5 numbers. And now we need to check, is the average efficiency of the next chemical, is it more than highest efficiency? Because if it is, it means we have a new high. And if we have a new high, we need to overwrite our highest efficiency name and highest efficiency with the new chemical name and its efficiency. Same for the low. Okay, this chemical that we've just done, is its efficiency less than the lowest efficiency? If it is, then we have a new low. Okay, and we then need to save that. We're going to take the chemical name and the average efficiency, and we're going to save it into the global variables. So test 1 is going to will run for each chemical, and after it's printed that particular chemical's information, we are going to check and see, do we have a new high and a new low? And if we do, we need to save that into the global variables. Perfect. Let's return back up to main. Okay, so here, this was the loop that ran numchem times for the number of chemicals we've got. So at the end of this loop, these statics, okay, these global variables are now holding the information about the highest and the lowest chemical. So all we've got to do here in the main is print that information out. Okay, so just like we did, very, very similar method to how we did the one chemical, we are just going to say print. We're going to say the least efficient chemical is, and we're going to say name lowest F, okay, because that's the name of the lowest efficient chemical. We saved it with a rating of, and then we've used its print. It's not print line, okay, so it's print, so the cursor stayed here. Then we use print F, okay, to print 3 decimal places. That lowest F, remember, it's a double, so it's got a bundle of decimal places. We're making it 3, and then print line just to drop it to the next line, and then we print the chemical with the highest efficiency. Okay, so here's system out print. The most efficient chemical is, this time we're saying name highest F with a rating of, same thing, print F to format it, and then print line to drop us to the next line. And you can see here, I tested it with some chemicals, and you can see it said the 2 that I tried, the test 1, okay, so these 2 lines here are outputted by test 1. So it's telling us each chemical I tested and what its rating was. And then here, this is telling us here which of them was the least. Okay, and you can see that it was indeed propane, because that's 805 point something. And the most efficient is cyanide with that rating. So there, our program is working fine. Okay, so this is up to section 2.3. Okay, so you should pause the video. Okay, so I'm just going to put it here for you so that if need be, okay, there's our global variables, and here's our main. Okay, so you can pause it here right now if you need to. And then let me move this down a bit here so you can see the part that I added at the bottom of test 1, which was this section down here. So you can pause the video here if you need to grab some of that code. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll pause the video again and let me write the next section of code for you. Okay, so we are moving now into the 2.4 section here in the test one method. They're saying that the one of the guys absent-minded, and he keeps adding the same chemical in twice. Okay, now luckily they are telling us that when he enters it in twice, he does it twice in a row. If they hadn't have done that, then this would have been a lot more difficult. Okay, so we just need to check what was the last chemical added. That's all we need to check. So when I'm adding a new chemical, I just need to see if it's the same as the last one that was added. Okay, so here's my program where we were. I've made two changes here. Okay, so the first one I've done is I've added in the globals. Okay, so here in the global area above the main, I've declared a new string variable called last chemical added. Okay, so it's a static, it's a string, and it's just setting it to the null string, a blank. Okay, exclamation mark, double apostrophe, double inverted commas, double inverted commas. Now, if you look in the question, they're telling you there that we need to modify one of these loops, and we're going to need to mess with numchem. So they are telling you, they're giving you a big clue there. But we know that we had declared int, we had put int numchem. So when we entered that here, we had declared numchem here in the main. Now, because we declared numchem in the main, remember what I said about scoping, that was then a local variable because we declared it inside of the main method. Now, if that's a local variable inside of the main, then there's no way for us to mess with that from inside of the test one method, because it literally does not even exist there. So I've got to change that. Okay, so I cannot declare numchem in the main. I've got to declare it in the global area. Okay, so all I've done is I got rid of the int in front of it, and I've declared it up top here. So I'm saying static int numchem equals 0. So I declare it in the global area, and as soon as I do that, it becomes a global variable that all methods can see. So I had to make that change. I then input how many chemicals to test, and I actually set a value here. So we give it 0 to begin with, but obviously the person's going to put a different value in here. Okay, so as we have done, we run test one, and our test to check to see if the absent-minded guy has put in a double chemical is here in test one. So here's the extra bit of code that I've added here. Okay, so we enter in the chemical name. We ask him to enter the chemical name. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to check, did he enter this chemical name in the previous turn? Okay, was this the same chemical that he added in before? So we're going to say, so the first time we get here, obviously last chemical added is a blank string because that's how we defined it. It's empty. Okay, but the next time we come here, okay, last chemical added is going to have the name of the last chemical that was added. Now remember, I cannot just say equals equals here, right? It's a string, so I've got to use the equals method. So I'm saying if chem name is a string. Because it's a string, it's an object. Again, because it's an object, I get methods. And one of those methods is equals. We've done this before. So I'm saying if chem name equals last chemical added. If it is the same, okay, they are the same thing, it means that the absent-minded guy has slipped up. So the first thing I need to do, and I'll show you why I do this, is I need to increase numchem, and I'll show you why now. Okay, the next thing I do is I want to display a message on the screen here. Okay, I'm going to use J option pane, but I'm not going to say show input dialog. That gets something from the keyboard. I'm going to say show message dialog. That's going to pop an alert up on the screen and say, look out, buddy, you've entered the same chemical as been added twice. Okay, and I use null there because I'm not referencing a frame on this. Okay, so and then I use the return statement. Return means Test 1 is finished. Go back to where you came from. Okay, so remember now I've bumped up numchem and I'm returning. Okay, that's if it was equal. If it's not equals, okay, so here's the else. Okay, if last chemical added is not the same as chemical name, chem name, it means that we have a valid chemical being entered here. So I need to save. So whatever chemical I'm adding in now is becoming last chemical added for the next time we test. Okay, so this new chemical we're doing is becoming what we are going to test for the next time we are in here. So last chemical added is a global. So I'm going to save the name of the current chemical into my last chemical added. So that there is the piece of code that I've added into this new section of code. Okay, now remember I said numchem ++. Right, let's go back here up to the call. Okay, so the idea is here, we are saying we are running this loop. Let's say I entered 3. Okay, I want to put 3 chemicals in. And let's say the second time I came in here, I was an idiot and I put the same name in a second time. Now you got to be careful, because now what's happened is you're going to come here and you're going to loop around again and you will have wasted one of your entries. Okay, so instead of putting in 2 chemicals, the second chemical you entered was a double, and instead of entering 3 chemicals, you're now going to enter 2. Okay, you're going to run out because this loop is only going to run 3 times, and you wasted one of those turns. So how do you make sure it runs one more time? Well, you can make this numchem 1 bigger. Okay, so instead of running 3 times like you wanted, you now run it 4 times, because one of those was a wasted time. Okay, so that is why we needed numchem, because that's how many times you're going to run this loop. That is why it needed to be available for both methods, and that is why we had to declare it as a global. Okay, so I'm going to leave this here for a sec. You can pause the video if you want to. So this was the piece that we added into the code here. Okay, and we made a small change over here. We no longer declare it. Okay, so you can pause the video here. And then the change we made down at the bottom here was this piece here. Okay, we added in this if else. So we put that in there, and that there checks to see if we've doubled up. And if we haven't, we save our chemical we're working on now as the new last chemical. Or if it was equal to, we were an idiot, and now I need to make my loop counter 1 bigger so I can get my turn back, show the message, and then return. This here is how you exit a method. Okay, return will exit the method back to the method that called it. Okay, so that's it for this section. I'll pause the video here and I will come back. Okay, in this last section now, we're into 2.5 of the question. They want us to generate this fancy number that's made up of a few pieces. Okay, so here in the main, okay, so here's where we print it out. Okay, so we printed out the least efficient and the most efficient chemicals. So directly after that is where we are going to build up the code, and we are going to print it out. So in this section, that's the only piece of code that I've added. Okay, I've added this extra piece of code here in the main section, just under printout here. And how I build this up. Okay, so the first thing they want us to do is they want us to generate a random number. Okay, between 1 and 10. Okay, so we know that, looking at the code here, we know that math random. Okay, so math random, that's going to throw us a random number, a double. Okay, it's going to throw us a double that's between 0 and 1. Now, I need it to be between 1 and 10. Okay, so math random, that's going to throw me a double from 0 to 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that number and I'm going to multiply it by 9. Okay, so instead of being from 0 to 1, it now goes from 0 to 9. And then I'm going to take that number and I'm going to add 1 to it. Okay, so instead of being from 0 to 9, it now from 1 to 10. Okay, so you see how we did that. It's still a double, okay, but the range is what we want it to be. Okay, and I want it to be an integer, so I cast it. Okay, remember I can cast it by just putting int in brackets in front of it. So this double, okay, that's a double. I put brackets around all of it, and then I just put brackets int in front of it. And that makes it into an integer. So, because I defined it as an integer, I said int the number equals, and I made my random number. So now what I'm going to do in my output here, in my print line, okay, the first thing they say we must do is whatever the highest efficiency name is, the name of the highest efficiency. Now we know that name highest F, that is the global variable that's holding the highest efficient name for us. Now they want us to get the very first character of that name. So we know that name highest F is a string. Okay, so we can say dot, and we're going to get all the methods that a string has. And one of those methods is substring. Okay, and substring wants 2 pieces of information. Where to start, okay, and we want from the very first character. And remember that it starts from 0. Okay, so character 0 is the first letter. Okay, and the ending character that's not in the piece you want. Okay, so I just want the first character. So from 0 to 1, okay, includes that, but does not include that. So that's going to give me the very first letter of whatever the chemical name is. Plus, okay, now I want the last letter of the chemical name. So once again, name highest F, that's the name of the chemical, dot, substring, okay, that's the method. But now I've somehow got to get to the last character. So how do I do that? Well, 0 was the first character. So what is the last character? Well, it's the length of the chemical, the length of its name. Okay, so name highest F dot length. That's going to tell me how long its name is, minus 1. Because remember, it's whatever the length is, it's going to be, because it starts from 0, it's going to be 1 less. Okay, so it's name highest F length. We're using the length method of the string to find its length, subtracting 1. Okay, that puts me right on the last character. And if I do not put a second parameter in, it just goes to the end of the string. And the end of the string is right where we are anyway. Okay, because I've grabbed the last character and the rest of the string, there is no rest. So that there will return the last name of the chemical for me. And then to the end of that, I'm going to add my random number, my integer that I've put here. So you can see here at the bottom, here's my printout. Okay, so this here came from the 1. Okay, the 1 method printed that out. I went with 2 chemicals again, propane and cyanide. Those are my values I ended up with for what I put in. Okay, the main is printing that out for us. Okay, it's saying the least efficient is cyanide with that. The most efficient is propane with that. And then here's the code that it built up. Okay, you can see the P is the first letter from propane. E is the last letter from propane. And 5, that's the random number that got thrown here. Okay, remember it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 10. So that is it for this program. Okay, there's a lot for you to unpack in here. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on the screen here just so that you can see. Remember this last section, this is the part that we added in. There's a lot to unpack in here. The way that it's been written here and the way they've asked you to do it in this question is definitely not the most efficient way. Okay, there's some things in this program that you wouldn't do if you're writing proper software. But don't worry about that. I will teach you what it is that you wouldn't be doing here. Okay, the way that they've set the program out here, they just want to see that you know how to make a method and how to call that method. They want to see that you know how to make global variables that all methods can act on. They want to see that you know how to make local variables that just that method can use. Okay, for example, here the number, because I've declared it int the number inside of the main, I could never use it from inside of test one. Okay, the scope for the number is just inside the main method. And that is fine. We never want to use the number from outside because I'm actually just printing it here and then we're done. So, like I said, there's a lot to unpack in this particular problem. I won't do question 3 now because it's getting a bit late. But what I'll do is I'll finish off this video now and I'll stick it onto my YouTube, and then you can have a look at it at your leisure. So if you've got any questions about this, please just give me a shout.